Hey, good morning. Really great you're able to join us again through our series of daily devotionals. Yesterday we began looking at one of Jesus' parables about the wineskins in Matthew chapter 9. And we're just going to spend a couple of days going through this. And so if you have your Bible with you, would you turn to Matthew chapter 9, and we're going to begin reading from verse 9. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and he followed him. And as Jesus reclined at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." Then the disciples of John came to him, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skin bursts, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, so both are preserved." Do you know the difference between institutions and institutionalism? Institutions are necessary. Some people get angry with institutions, but you can't really do anything without them. Whenever two people get together and make a plan or do anything of significance, you've got an institution. And institutions are necessary for us. Institutionalism is when you do it for a long time and you don't remember why you're doing it. It's when you do it because you've always done it, or maybe to retain some sense of power or something like that. Now, I'm not a connoisseur of wine. Wine tastes like old socks or grape juice gone bad to me. But as I understand it from people who know, new wine is actually the worst wine. It tastes to me like liquid aspirin, and old wine is actually the good wine. And so whatever Jesus is saying in this parable here, it would have been a pretty hard thing being new wine, aspirin, liquid aspirin. It would have been a very hard thing for Jesus' audience to swallow. Now, from yesterday's devotional, remember that this parable and the wineskins are really about the types of people Jesus is calling to himself, his followers or his disciples. In verse 12, he says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." Those who think they have no need are the old wineskins. Those who recognize they are sick and are in need are the new wineskins. And now look at verse 13, because this gives us an insight into what the wine is about. "Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice." I would suggest from this text that the new wine smells like caring. It smells like compassion. You've probably heard something like this before. They say a text without a context is a pretext, and that's certainly true here. Matthew chapter 8 and chapter 9 are jam-packed, full. It starts out with a leper who is cleansed, and then a paralytic man who gets forgiven his sins and he walks. Jesus heals a demon-possessed man and later goes to a tax collector's home, one of the most despised by Jewish society, and he eats with him. Then it goes to a girl who has died and her father who loved her, and Jesus brought her back to life, even though the girl's father had been a ruler of a synagogue, the very people who hated and despised Jesus. Right after that, there's an unclean woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years and wanted to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, and she gets healed. And then in the same chapter, there are two blind people, and they get healed. And then there's a mute guy healed as Jesus casts a demon from him. And one of the primary commonalities that they all had was they experienced some form of loss, pain, or suffering. All of them were in great need. They needed compassion. And at the end of this chapter, of chapter 9, beginning in verse 36, this is what we read. Jesus saw the crowds. He had compassion because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers." Now the scholars will tell you that the miracles of Jesus were done to shine a spotlight on who he was and what he taught, his authority. And what they say about that is true. But the immediate reason those things happened is because Jesus looked at the paralytic and he wept. He looked at the tax collector who nobody could stand and he smiled. He looked at the mute and his heart was broken. At the diseased, the blind and the dead, and the tears of God fell on the ground of the earth. He looked at the demon-possessed who had been overpowered and lost all control. And it's compassion. It smells like caring. You know, in our neighborhoods and communities, in our church, we have people who come from ruptured families, couples who have experienced divorce. There are people who have been abused. There are people who have been told that they're going to die because they have cancer. People who have experienced financial loss. We have people who are sinning to cope with the difficulty of life, who are yielding to temptation and addiction. We've got people who are scared and struggle to sleep at night. We've got people who are neurotic and uptight, people who despise and hate others. We have people who have experienced loss, pain and suffering and are in need of compassion and the presence of others. And can we recognize our own needs in the same way? Some of these are actually us. You know, when new wine happens, when compassion happens, it gets inside of you and you begin to care. We hold sinners while they weep. It means looking at our brothers and sisters, not in condemnation, but to know that life is hard for you and for me. And we can't do this by ourselves. It's that kind of compassion. We're compassionate with those who make us uncomfortable, a caring that goes to our heart and changes us despite what's happening externally. When Jesus' compassion is present, that is the new wine. It moves, it changes, it's a change agent. It changes the container that holds it. Parents who have left home come running back. Addicts move towards sobriety. Hatred falls on its knees, and God changes hearts because new wine smells like compassion. New wine isn't stagnant. If our faith doesn't move us to change towards communal compassion, then it's not the new wine. When compassion isn't present, we will hear the sound of exploding wineskins, and we as sinners ourselves will be part of the explosion as well. If we treat people as if they needed to change before they become accepted, the paradigm of compassion and grace that Christ has offered us explodes. We then have to become the unmerciful servant of Matthew chapter 18. And we've forgotten one of the very reasons we're doing all this religious stuff in the first place. And so my question for us this morning is this: what is our expression of compassion revealing about us and what's inside of us? Thanks again for being with us this morning, and please join us tomorrow as we just again look briefly into the parable, or Jesus' parable about wineskins.